just because you have a dream, it would be dangerous to call that dream your calling. And until it becomes a reality, you can't call it your assignment. And part of the maturing process as followers of Jesus is to trust that God's got a plan that will be executed. Otherwise, I'm not sure he deserves the title God.
Award-winning singer-songwriter and my friend Aaron Shust. Welcome, man.
Sam Hart, good to be here, my friend.
I've been looking forward to this one, dude.
Likewise.
Usually we're hanging out over pizza, though.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to pass on the love that's been shared with me. Starting with this little place in Atlanta called Antico that then spread out, and in Nashville it's called DeSano's. So if you're in Nashville, you gotta hit DeSano's, and you gotta get the San Gennaro pizza. If you're not, you know what? Nashville's becoming a place, Sam, where more and more people want to come and visit. You know, I meet people all the time. They're like, "Oh, Nashville's on my bucket list. I got to come see Nashville." I don't know why they want to, but when they do come, they should visit. Are we sponsored by DeSano's? Is this episode sponsored by?
I hope we get some free merch after this.
Right.
But yeah, I can vouch for it. DeSano's awesome. Folks have said the same thing to me. Like, "Oh, I love Nashville. We're going there this summer," or whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a place where, you know, I've been coming and visiting to work for over 20 years. And for the past 8 years, been living here. I joke, but I'm dead serious. I said a long time ago, it wasn't like to God in a prayer. I think I knew better than that. But how many times in passing did I say, yeah, I'll work in Nashville, but I'll never live there? And I think it's because I felt like when I was coming to visit to work, it felt like one big office. And I didn't want to live in the office. I wanted to be able to quote unquote go home every once in a while. And so I jokingly say that if you want to move to Nashville, just announce before God that you will never live in Nashville, and chances are he'll move you there. But man, it's been wonderful living here. But it's the place where it's the place where we get our groceries. It's the place where our kids go to school, where we go to church, where we get work done. So to me, it doesn't have this mysterious shine, but it's home. It's where my family is. So I love it.
Well, for those listening that don't know much about your story, I was hoping you could give a recap of just, where you grew up and how you got into music and a little bit of that journey that got you to where you are now.
Yeah, totally. I call Pittsburgh my hometown. I was born in Chicago. My dad worked for American Airlines, and he was stationed in Chicago for 10 years. That's where I was born. But just, I think like a year and a couple months into my life, we moved back to Pittsburgh, where he was raised, a little town outside Pittsburgh called Aliquippa. And it's pretty much known for football and some good Italian food. But that's where I was from. And we went to this tiny little church where my mom was in charge of the music. Everything from, what the choir was going to sing on any given Sunday, special music, what the offertory was going to be, and then planning the big, I think there was 2 cantatas, that word, like big musical numbers, big specials. One would be at the end of the summer, and then one would be for Christmas. I guess there might have been an Easter one as well. The kids had an end of summer performance. That's what it was, because we would practice all summer long. So my mom was doing the adults choir. So anyhow, just music, church. So I think the first time she put me up on stage to sing a solo, I was 4 years old on a Sunday night. Don't even really remember doing it. I remember the song because I sang that song a number of times over the years. But those 2 things, church and music together, were a big part of who I was. I went to public school, always felt a little out of my depth. I went to summer camps, was the place, like church camps, where I felt the most comfortable. Like I could be me. Like I'm surrounded by a couple hundred other kids who also believe that Jesus is the Lord. And then when music and worship would happen during those summer camp moments, that was just like, this is incredible. The idea that, we're not just singing hymns, which I love now, but I thought were antiquated old school stuff. But now we're singing these, these choruses like Shine, Jesus, Shine. And we're talking like late 80s, early 90s songs, right? And I loved it. So I went to college in Toccoa Falls College, a private Christian school in Northeast Georgia. That's what brought me south for the first time. I was tired of being cold. So I moved to the South and got a degree in music education. So to be able basically to teach high school chorus. But I always had this dream since I was 13, and I saw Michael W. Smith on TV, on Cornerstone Television. They played music videos, performing, which I guess was his live set, which I think was the big, is that the same thing as the Big Picture Tour? It was around like the early 80s. And there's Chris Rodriguez playing that pink Stratocaster, and Michael W. Smith's playing a keyboard and singing these songs. Like I had the cassettes, I knew these songs. I'm like, this is incredible. Like this is a job. you can actually write songs and sing songs about Jesus that sound like this. Like, sign me up. Let's do that. And so that was my pipe dream from childhood. So then fast forwarding to my my degree choices, performance, which was going to be opera, and I don't have a vibrato, by the way. It's just flat. Unless I mean, we've recorded together. Every once in a while, you're like, dude, I think I just heard vibrato. It's like it's an anomaly. Like yeah, it's just because I was back here shaking my head. That's why. So
Dude,
like
that's hilarious.
being an opera major, like I remember asking my vocal coach my very first day as a freshman. I'm 17 years old. I went early, asking him like, how? Here I am in college now. Tell me, what's the secret? How does one achieve vibrato? And he looked mystified, like he just didn't understand. He was like, if you do it correctly, it just happens. Like, well, that's not gonna help. So I still don't know how to do that. But it's interesting. Like if we're gonna make this my story somewhat practical, like I'm taking these steps that I felt were wise. Like, let's get a degree in music education. But there's still this dream in the back of my mind. I would love to write songs that are, call them pop, call them rock, whatever, that are, but not Handel or Bach, but they were writing what was pop music for their time, right? I just wanted to write songs and music that was current for today, that had lyrics that pointed to the depth and the beauty and the power of the love of God as found in Scripture. That was maybe I couldn't have verbalized that. I just wanted to write Jesus music, and so that was my hobby. That's what I did late at night. I'd go into the practice rooms, and I would do an hour of my scales and work on the songs that I had to perform for my piano minor, that I had to perform before my professor the next week. But then I would turn the lights off. I'd literally just make the room as dark as possible, and I would just play. I would just write, and I would try to play a song that I heard on the radio. I remember learning Amy Grant's "Breath of Heaven" from her Christmas album. That's just that beautiful B minor, and there's a beautiful piano part. Like, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm not gonna buy the sheet music. It's probably wrong anyhow. I'm gonna figure this out. And that's where this love of songwriting honestly began in college. Trying to
Hmm.
write songs about that felt journalistic to me. Like, let's just write songs as if I were gonna write in my journal. What would this prayer sound like? Put a little band together after I graduated, stayed in town. Got the bug to make band music and write songs that talked about God. Whether it wasn't very worshipful yet. It was more, like I said, like a journal, like prayer journals. But it wasn't working out. Nobody was interested. No one was signing me. And then I met a girl, and I wanted her parents to give me permission to marry her. So I got a real job at a church in Atlanta. I was actually as a worship leader, but I wasn't going in to be hired as a worship leader. I was looking for a position as an arranger, to like arrange all their music for the band and for the orchestra. That was going to be my job. I was going to sit in a cave in the basement and just arrange the sheet music for the band.
That tracks, dude. Like, having worked with you, you're one of the most, I don't know, music theory oriented artists
Overly
I've ever
analytical.
worked with. No, not overly, beautifully analytical.
Thank you.
You're very intentional, very thoughtful, and I also love the gleam in your eye, how you nerd out about it. Just like, ooh, and then we can do these harmonies that do this. And I'm like, that's jazz, and I love it.
It's fun to get creative. That sounds like such a general statement. It's fun to push the envelope too far, and then sometimes you pull it back to sanity, and sometimes you leave it, and you realize it wasn't too far.
No,
You can always dial it back if you need to for whatever reason. But very rarely do I think, oh, that's too much.
absolutely. I love that about you, dude. I love that you're willing to just have fun and play and splash paint all over the canvas.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Here's a crazy idea. I'm just tossing spaghetti. If it sticks, it sticks. If it falls, let it fall. But the church didn't hire me for that. They actually this guy took me out for sushi, and he said, "Well, we've been interviewing this other guy, and he's really good. As a matter of fact, he's better than you. We're gonna hire him, but we like the way you lead worship, so we'd like to hire you as a worship leader." Really? So that season brought in like me writing songs that felt more worshipful, because I had a captive audience every Sunday that wasn't gathering to see me. I'd love to believe they were gathering to meet with God, but they were there, and I was on stage with a microphone, and we started singing songs about, not just about God, but to God. There's the difference.
Hmm.
And I'm like, this is pretty spectacular. What if I could write songs to God that we could sing together? And
Mm.
that began a new challenge that eventually led to an album that eventually led to 10 more.
Yeah, man, and it's so interesting hearing you say that because I think people would know you for songs like "My Savior, My God," "Ever Be," and to hear you talk about you started writing Monday through Saturday songs, so to
Yeah.
speak, journal
Interesting.
songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, have you gone back to that at all? Do you still write those types of songs?
I do. And I think throughout the course of my 10 albums and a couple singles and whatnot in between, this would be an interesting study for me. It probably wouldn't be interesting to anybody else, but I'd be really curious to know what percentage I would classify as. I mean, you said Monday through Saturday songs as opposed to Sunday songs. I like that. What are the journalistic songs that are, I mean, journalistic, like what I would write in my journal. Here's my journal. This is my prayer journal. I've kept a prayer journal since 1993. It always felt weird I've never had a Dear Diary journal, not writing to myself. It's been like an ongoing conversation with God. And I might write down things that he knows, but like, man, today I did this and Daniel said this, my son, and then this happened and my word, this happened. And then the first half of every page, and I try to just do one page per entry. Whenever I sit down to journal, I try to keep it limit it to one page. Like, let's say what I need to say. It's kind of like with a song. Can we keep it under 5 minutes, please? Maybe 3.5, preferably. If it takes you 9 minutes to say something, maybe you're not saying it as accurately as you could. So it's a discipline to keep it down to one page. But the first half of each page might be reminding my future self what just happened, and then the second half might be more like, so God, I need your wisdom in this. And it's really just a prayer asking God for his insight and his help and what I'm feeling, what I'm emotionally going through. And it's cool to look back and be like, oh man, I forgot this was happening. And God met me there, you know?
Yeah, man, I just reached over and I grabbed my journal, and I've told you this before, but in the last year, less than a year maybe, it has become such a daily, like, or close to daily lifeline for me. And you're one of the handful of people that encouraged me to start journaling. You probably don't even
Good.
remember that, but you started talking about it one day during probably one of our sessions or something. So I started journaling, dude. And I used to hate it. I used to hate it because it just felt sort of like I was documenting something. I'd rather just live than
Right,
document or
right.
whatever. But it's become something that when I don't do it, I feel it. Just a way to process.
Yeah, it is. It's a way to process in real time. And I've also experienced enough reflection, retroactive visiting of former journals to know how beneficial that is. And to be reminded of how God's provided in moments where, I mean, if I'm going to be honest about what's happening, it's going to come with some fear. And
Mm.
I'm saying things like, God, I don't know how are we going to make ends meet this month? God, I don't know that so and so's been sick in bed for this long. What's going on? Like, we're back in the hospital again. Like all of this, and the fear that might come out in the pages. And I can look back and be like, man, God met us there. God delivered. Or that was a tragic event. And
Mm.
yet God is still on his throne. And maybe I couldn't feel it then, but I know it now. Or even more so, like maybe sometimes I'm very bold in my prayers. I'm like, God, please make this happen. And it didn't happen. And I can look back later and be like, ooh, I'm so glad that didn't happen. I was praying for it to happen, but God didn't answer because he knew better. He knew better. Had it been answered the way I was praying, the outcome wouldn't have been as beautiful or as glorious as he knew it would be. So that
Mm.
it's a constant reminder to look back.
That's good, man. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about is something that you mentioned a while back, and you were talking about the difference between this concept of calling and assignment.
Assignment.
And I wanted to ask you more about that. What do you mean? Like, to you, what's the difference between the two?
It's just a word, but the distinction is dramatic. And I remember reading a book. I wish I could remember the title of it. I'm scanning my bookshelf behind the screen right here to see if it's on it. I'm not seeing it. But Fred Hartley, a pastor in the Christian Missionary Alliance, Fred Hartley the third. I went to school with his son, Fred Hartley the fourth. But he wrote a book, and I brought this topic up to some people who I know him and who have worked with him. Like, oh yeah, Fred loves to talk about the difference between calling and assignment. And let me take a step back. How many times have I said or heard someone else say, like, well, this is just, it's not my calling, or my calling is to be a singer, or my calling is to be a songwriter, or my calling is to be an artist. And Well, he differentiates it by saying, no, and I don't want to put words in his mouth. He says it better, and I don't want to misquote him. So I'll tell you what has found its way into my soul years later. I see calling as followers of Jesus for all of us to maybe be one and the same. We are called sons of God. I think of John 1:12, to all who did believe him, to all who did receive him, to all who believed in his name, he gave the right to be called the children of God. Okay? So that's status. That's who we are. There's a calling to go and make disciples, right? Of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. That could be a calling to love our neighbor, to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbors as ourselves. This is a calling. Jesus said, "If you love me, you'll obey my commandments." You could say that's a calling. What's the assignment? Might be how you do that in a given season. So loving your neighbor is going to potentially you could say, people ask Jesus, well, who is my neighbor? This guy, that guy? And basically he tells a story that shows that everybody is our neighbor, but quite literally the people in my neighborhood. And when I change neighborhoods because I move across town or across the country, my assignment has changed. That's a real practical, obvious example of that. A job is going to change from one season to another. Your assignment can change. So I'm in an assignment season right now as an artist who writes songs, records songs, sings songs, goes out around the world and plays them. And now we've got social media. That's an assignment that even when I'm not in a certain given town, I can reach people across the planet through social media. That's part of my assignment. And that can change. My assignment as a singer songwriter would change if I stopped recording albums and stopped performing. It might change into something else. Let's say I become a professor at a college and I teach music. Now my assignment has changed, but my calling could remain the same.
Dude, you know what I love about that is I think there's going to be people that maybe struggle with even listening to a podcast called Christian Music Maker, because maybe they're a Christian, and I think even as I've talked about this with folks, sometimes they're like, okay, well, I'm not really interested in being a part of Christian music. And sometimes I have to be like, yes, I don't mean necessarily Christian music as in the genre or whatever. I'm talking to Christians who make music, right? And so what I love about what you just said is I think a lot of times in the Christian and worship music world, there's this preoccupation with the idea of calling, like I feel called to do this thing. And then sometimes people can spend a whole lifetime chasing an idea in their head about what that calling is supposed to look like.
That's
Right.
huge. Totally.
And, and so what I love about what you're saying is you could be a Christian who has an assignment to be a Christian who makes music for Christians primarily in the Christian music, quote unquote, industry or community. Or you could be a Christian who makes music and you're never on a Christian music stage. You're on a music stage just as a whatever kind of artist that makes mainstream, just general music. That's not for a Christian audience. And what you're saying has the same exact power for both. And I love that. I love that.
It makes me wonder whether or not the word dream needs to be added into this equation of calling, an assignment, and dream. Let me clarify. We've got a calling to love God and love our neighbors as ourselves. Let's start with that in its simplest form. We can have a dream, like I had a dream when I was 13. I would love to do this. Just because you have a dream, it would be dangerous to call that dream your calling. And until it becomes a reality, you can't call it your assignment unless you're going to say, all right, I'm going to work my tail off to achieve this dream. I mean, I've got high school age kids that are working to achieve their dreams of what college, etc., is going to look like. And they may or may not achieve those dreams. And part of the maturing process as followers of Jesus is to trust that God's got a plan that will be executed. Otherwise, I'm not sure he deserves the title God. It will be executed, and we can get into, maybe on a different episode, we can get into all that good stuff.
That's juicy.
But that's juicy, right? But there's such peace. I mean, I've been singing for a long time, man. I'm not skilled to understand what God has willed or what God has planned. I only know at his right hand stands one who is my Savior. And I take such
Mm.
comfort in that. It doesn't get me off the hook from trying and from working. Um, I think of the parable of the wicked servant who buried the talent whenever the master was away. No one thought he was wicked until the master came back and said, "You wicked servant, you could have at least put it in the bank and given me some interest." We don't want to bury our talents. Just trusting that God has our best in mind, not just his best, our best in mind. If you've raised kids, as we both have, we know there's seasons, and those seasons change as well, and they develop where they don't understand why they're not supposed to touch the stove. We do. They don't. They have to trust us. They don't understand why you shouldn't play in the street. They don't understand why you shouldn't take the car and drive out past midnight. They don't understand why you shouldn't speed. They don't, like we do. And until they often learn the hard way, they don't. And so, with that same analogy, our Father, my goodness, Isaiah 55, God's ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. That's an understatement, right? Like his ways are so much higher, we can't even come close to comprehending. So when something doesn't happen and we shake our fist at the sky, why, God, why would you allow this to happen? We don't understand. I'd like to believe that our glorified minds one day will, but it's all about
Yeah,
trust and patience.
absolutely.
And yeah, so pursue those dreams. But until you do, you've got an assignment in your lap right now. You've got something that God's given you to do right now. So be faithful in that, right?
It's been my experience that there's this interesting dance between, like you said, the calling for every believer, the dreams in my heart. Are they my dreams or God's dreams? And then the assignment, like you said, being faithful where I am, and yet that dream putting a seed of future assignments in front of me, like this vision. And then the new conversation there is, how do I walk hand in hand with him in the process of figuring that out between this assignment, that possible assignment, and how I get from one to the other. I find it's just about being with him, just
The
being in his
answer.
presence. And
Yeah.
it's easy though to have this whole narrative happening in my head that doesn't include him, about that dream and about the future. How has that been for you?
That's an ongoing thing. It just happened an hour ago before you and I got on. I was walking around, and I pace when I'm thinking. I'm just walking through. Everybody's at work and at school. I got the whole house to myself. I'm just pacing through the house. And I'm thinking about what we could talk about and what the direction that I was pretty sure we were going to go. And I stopped myself and I realized, Aaron, you're flirting with rehearsing answers. This is not what I need right now. What I need to do is go up into my room, shut the door, and get on my face and say, God, speak through me. God, prepare my heart. Like we just worked on a song, Authority. Second verse talks about, it's straight from scripture. And the very end of Mark 1, it says that Jesus got up really early in the morning while it was still dark, and he went away and he found a desolate place, and there he prayed to his Father. I've recently, over the past couple of years, been maybe confronted is the right word, confronted with this notion that Jesus, who often said, I only do what the Father tells me to do. I only say what the Father tells me to say. And then you have these stories of him often going out and finding these desolate places where I always say he leaves his cell phone at Peter's house and leaves and finds some quiet space to connect with his Father, maybe because he was getting marching orders for the day, right? Like what is it that you would have me do to, I'm not sure if your viewers are into Chosen. People seem to love it or hate it. I love it. And one of my favorite things is how Jesus will often like find himself in a situation where either like he realizes, oh, this is the encounter that I knew was coming today. I do believe that he was in constant communication with his Father.
Mm.
And sometimes very specifically. So there's the walking through the day and just like the shooting out the prayer, God give me wisdom. But then there's the deeper times where I'm going to set a time and a place, and I'm not going to break. Have you heard the story of when Billy Graham received a phone call at his house from a president? I think it might have been Reagan. I can't remember who it was. But his wife Ruth answered the phone, and it was probably not the president on the line. It was probably the president's assistant. Like, hey, we have the president of the United States on the phone for Mr. Billy Graham. And Ruth answered the phone and said, "I'm sorry, he's not available right now." And the assistant said, "I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you understood. This is the president of the United States on the phone for Billy Graham." And Ruth was like, "I'm not sure you understand. Billy is praying to the king of the universe, and he's not available right now." Like, wow. That's always stuck with me. There's something
That's
about
great, man.
protecting the time. And my goodness, if we can't even protect our time with the Lord from our Instagram stream, what's going to happen when the president of the United States calls? We're gonna say, "Thank you, God," drop everything we're doing and take the phone call. But Billy knew better. He protected his time. And he says that one of his regrets in life as he aged was that he didn't spend more time in the word and in prayer. Billy Graham said that. If that's the case, that's the case for all of us.
Yeah, man. Desolate places. Is that what
Yeah.
you said?
Yeah, that's a translation. I couldn't tell you which one it is, but it's like, what would be another translation? It's all over the Gospels. A quiet place or a solitary place. It's basically like where there are no distractions. Desolate place.
This is a little bit artsy and whatever, but I feel like desolate could be a great metaphor where we could choose it. We think of the way you're using it, like getting away to be with him. But then there's times and seasons where we don't choose it and we find ourselves in a desolate place. It can be a beautiful place or it can be a dry, lonely, hard, depressing place. And it's funny, I think we find ourselves in both all throughout our lives.
Mark chapter 1. I'm in the here we go. Lonely Spot is another one. This is the complete Jewish Bible, the CJB I'm looking at. Lonely Spot. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Yeshua got up, left, went away to a lonely spot and stayed there praying. You mentioned dry and like a desolate, like a dry and lonely place. Yeah, lonely spot. There's value in that. I mean, I'll say this, like when I think of desolate, it carries a negative connotation to me as I think of like, oh, what would the post-apocalyptic scene in some movie would be like? Oh, it's just desolate. Or some the desert or plains. But like in Jewish culture, there was such a high view of intentionally finding literally desert wilderness places, and the Essenes just lived in the desert. They built a little commune because they believed it was so important, as modeled throughout the Bible. It's Abraham and Moses and all of Israel and David and John the Baptist and Jesus. These are people who are documented as like intentionally going into the wilderness for seasons to say, "I'm going to go where there's nothing." The like extreme lack of distraction for the purpose not of losing weight, not of getting a tan, but for connecting with the King of the universe.
Think of times in my life. I mean, back in 2016, I went through a time when I was leading worship at this multi-site church. We had 5 services a weekend just at the campus I was at. And
That's
during
a
that
lot.
season, yeah, it's a lot. During that season, I kind of went through a desolate wilderness in my life. And it was hard. It was tough. It took me a while, months to get through it and figure out how overworking and a lot of other things. And I think somebody listening is tracking with us in terms of, oh yeah, I can make time for myself. And we, when you grew up in the church or whatever, we're used to the idea of quiet time, devotional time, study time, pursuing the Lord, like we even talked about journaling and prayer and all of that, our devotional life.
Sure.
And then there's times when we don't choose these seasons. It's funny though, I look back and I found the Lord in a way that I never would have if I didn't go through that. In fact, at the risk of oversharing, I'll just mention I felt like I was becoming almost like an agnostic or an atheist. I was struggling with my faith at a
Wow.
very deep level. And I remember getting up one morning to lead worship all day on a Sunday and looking at myself in the mirror and thinking, you're a fraud. You're about to go up on a platform and do what you're paid to do, what you
Yeah.
know how to do, lead people to a throne you don't even know if you believe exists. And I felt just this awful tension. So I had to just, thank God I had a great mentor who was just kind of shepherding me through that. Rich, if you're listening, I love you, dude. I appreciate you so much for that time. But somebody listening is going through that right now. And I just wonder,
Totally.
knowing you, and you've been doing this for, at least a couple decades now, Have you been through seasons like that? And what does it look like for you? What's helped you stay mentally and emotionally healthy through the highs and lows of just life in general, but ministry and career and traveling all the time and all that stuff?
Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing that. I'm glad you did share that, because I think that that is going to resonate with a lot of people, and it resonates with me. Absolutely. Have I walked through those seasons of desolation that were not the good desolate places. I haven't done this recently, but I've gone into seasons where I'm like, I want to take 40 days off of social media. I'm gonna basically put myself through a fast of sorts. This is a reminder, God, I want you more. I want you more. And how often do I find myself saying that? God, I want you more. I want you, unless I cut something out. It's just a reminder to me to say, how bad do you want God? How bad do you want his
Right.
wisdom? How badly do you want his spirit? Do you want chocolate more? So there's those moments where you choose desolation. Then there's those moments where you just choose to walk away from God. And the result is a desolate spirit, a broken spirit. Um, this past week, I wasn't leading worship. It was a concert at a fundraiser in Los Angeles, but I got there early, got in the night before. And so early the next morning, I was having breakfast with the whole group, and I popped in for a little bit of their morning session, and there was a worship leader leading, and played a couple songs that I was familiar with and played a couple songs that I wasn't familiar with. And there was a line, and some of you listeners, you might know this, but one of the lines had something to do with, like, it was kind of poetically describing the resurrection, and then it said the line, like, he took a breath and everything changed. And I'm singing this, and I wasn't singing, I was just listening, because I didn't know the song. So I'm looking at the words on the screen. The music sounded incredible, and I'm like, man, he came back to life and everything changed, and I felt like a fraud in that moment. I felt like,
Mm.
man, not everything's changed. I still resonate with Paul. Like, what a wretched man I am. Who will save me from this body of death? The things I want to do, I don't. The things I don't want to do, I do. What in the world? And I had this Isaiah 6 moment, thinking about, this is the here I am, send me. But before the here I am moment, Isaiah has this vision where he all of a sudden sees himself before the king. And he's like, his immediate response is woe is me, which basically means I'm going to die. Like, woe is me. I'm a man of unclean lips, and from a people of unclean lips, and I've seen the king. I don't think he had a foul mouth. I think in comparison to the God of creation, the Holy One, he realized how, by comparison, his mouth is just filthy, right?
Mm.
Compared to holiness. Um, and yet God cleansed him, and then God called him, which is interesting when you think that God called him into this vision first. He had a realization. Isaiah had a realization of his unworthiness. God cleansed him with the coal on the lips of the unworthiness, and then he called him. Who will go for us? Whom shall I send? And that's when the here I am moment happens. I felt like in that moment the Spirit kind of whispered to my spirit, "Your status changed. Everything changed." I'm like, but I haven't changed. God forgive me. Woe is me. I haven't changed. And he's like, your status has changed. You're a child of God. You're my son, right? You used to be a sinner. Now you're a saint. You used to be an outsider. Now you're an insider. You used to be a slave. Now you're a son. That's changed. Everything's changed. Everything's changed. I felt such love and acceptance in spite of my unworthiness. And I think, how many times have we, to get back to what you were saying, how many times do I have to take the stage knowing that I'm a man of unclean lips and from a people of unclean lips?
Thing and going through seasons of, I don't know, desolation in that sense? And if so,
Yeah.
like, what's an example of that? And how do you get through that typically?
Well, the thing about writing and the thing about creativity at all is that it doesn't, at least for me, it doesn't come on command. So whenever I finish a song, or even like, I'm working on something right now where I've got a chorus that I'm pretty jazzed about. I'm like, this is good, but I have zero clue where a verse could be or what it could be. So there's that sense of the blank canvas. So just because I have a chorus that I'm excited about, like, this might be it. So thank goodness for collaboration. I might sit down with somebody and be like, "Oh, you could help me with this." But there's always that fear, like the imposter syndrome, like you were saying earlier, like I don't belong here. This is not. They're gonna find out that undeservedly on stage for 20 years plus, since I was 4. I shouldn't be doing this. Like, and because we all have our insecurities.
So you still have imposter syndrome now?
Oh, yeah. Even more so, I think. Because, I mean, take it back 20 years ago when I just started, in the public eye at least, which was what odd thing. Like I said, I've been singing on stage since I was 4. Uh, this is the guy who has no vibrato. Everyone who's listening to this podcast probably knows, but it's the little wiggle that it's a really odd thing in music to me because I don't have it. But I do find it to be very pleasant when people have a vibrato. If it's too fast, if it's too slow, that might be a different opinion. But it's that little wiggle that I don't even know why it happens, like that when it's the right speed, we find it to be very pleasant. I mean, we might not even know why, but we say things like, that person has a great voice. Well, I don't have that, so that's something that's always been a point of insecurity for me. But year number 1, 2005, when I released my first album, there's always that chance that I'm going to be just around for 1 year. Like, oh, remember Aaron? But I've been doing this for 20 years. So there's this sense of like, oh, wow, if I get found out, or what's that even mean? It's based on nothing. It's just based on abject fear, which I say does not come from the Lord. There's good fear, like fearing the Lord and saying, kind of like Isaiah, he feared the Lord. He wasn't like, what's up, dog? He was like, woe is me. I'm a man of unclean lips and I've seen the King. That's fear. That's respect. That's healthy. And then there's just fear that doesn't fit that category. And I believe that comes from the enemy. He wants to stymie us. He knows. I heard a pastor one time give an example of the fishers of men example that Jesus gave, that Satan knows that if we have been caught by Jesus and we're in his net, that we're his. And as Jesus says in John 10, no one can snatch us away from the Father. Like in his grasp, we're his. But if we as fish can be put in the freezer, if Satan can put us in the freezer and take us out of the game, then his mission is accomplished. And I often think like, man, I feel like I've been in the freezer. God forgive me. Get me out of the freezer. Rich Mullins talks about it's better to be loved by God than to be used by God, because, Pontius Pilate was used. The Roman centurion was used. Herod was used. Judas was used. It's a good thing to be loved by God if we can be content there.
Dude, I love the reference to the rich. That's
Rich
awesome.
Mullins?
Oh, dude.
Come on.
In 2019, my wife and I had every reason to stay in California. Speaking of assignment versus calling, we felt this possible assignment shift to Nashville. And so we started praying. We were asking mentors, like, are we stupid? Talk us out of this. And all of a sudden, God started bringing all these things into our lives that had to do with Nashville, like without us trying. And one of them was one day we stumbled across the Ragamuffin movie. It's just on Amazon, probably still in the back closets of Amazon somewhere.
Yes.
And it was incredible. Like something about it just set our hearts on fire. Like, man, we so resonate with his ministry-oriented reason for doing music.
He had this John the Baptist spirit about him that was just kind of like, this is me. I'm going to be me, but it's not in the selfish sense. Like, I feel like he existed for the glory of God, in my opinion. Like, he wanted to write songs for the glory of God. But the dude wore t-shirts and grew his hair long and was barefoot and had ratty old jeans. He didn't care. Like, he was the epitome of, he probably ate locusts in his spare time and wild honey and camel hair like John the Baptist. Like, he didn't fit the mold. And that's what's so beautiful, right?
You're wearing a t-shirt and you have long hair. Are you wearing shoes? Are you barefoot?
I am barefoot. I'm about to fall off my chair. See, there's a little Rich Mullins in my soul. I do drive a Jeep as well. I don't play the dulcimer though, so that's.
Well, you're one of the artists that I
like
would bet that one of your songs, your next song, could have dulcimer.
I put dulcimer on the Psalms album. Psalm 23's got a little Rich Mullins nod with some dulcimer at the beginning.
Dude, that record is so good. If you're listening to this and you haven't heard that album, it's just good. It's just good. It's
Thanks,
awesome.
man.
And I
Thanks,
can say
man.
that I wasn't part of writing or producing any of it. Was Isaiah 53? That one was incredible as well.
You made the cover of that one, that beautiful cover. You did.
Oh, that's right.
You did. I actually met a guy this past week. He was on that worship team. That was in that story I was just telling. He's like, hey, so I forget how he worded this. It was kind of funny. He said, he said, this past Good Friday, I performed, I played your Isaiah 53. I'm like, I've never met anybody who actually played that song and told me about it. He said, it was pretty cool, man. He said, it's the first Aaron Shust song I ever heard. Um, I,
Wow.
I played it. And then he said, then I heard that you were coming this week. I was like, oh, I got to tell him that I played Isaiah 53. So, and that was just a song. Talk about like a holy discontent. I just, I just knew in the back of my heart, I need to write a song that's straight from Isaiah 53. And I knew, I mean, it wasn't random. Like I knew what it was. I knew that it was he was wounded because of our sins, the suffering servant song. But I didn't know what it was going to sound like. I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't have a melody. I just knew that, and it kind of nagged on my heart for about a month until I finally came into this room and shut the door and just started playing through different chords and melodies and progressions.
It's so gorgeous, dude. So
Thanks, man.
gorgeous. And Nathan Knuckles, did he
The
produce it?
Knuckles, yeah, and we got a Duke player from Israel, and Shy Soul is a singer who sang on it. Just she came up with some harmonies that Nathan was like, yeah, I never would have thought to recommend those harmonies to her, but they sound right. Like she made them sound right. Butler played cello, and so it's a gorgeous, gorgeous
Yeah,
song.
man. Hauntingly beautiful. Bro, before we moved on from what you were sharing about the imposter syndrome, somebody's listening to this and they feel like maybe it's something like you about the vibrato thing. But they're just like, well, kind of like Moses, God, but I don't talk good or whatever. And
It's a good
yet
example.
they have this fire in them almost like, and I've felt this in my life before when it's like the thing that I feel like I can't get away from. It's in front of me whether I choose it or not almost. And this podcast has felt like that, where it's like if I get to my deathbed and I haven't done this yet, I'll be so grieved,
Right? Yeah.
that sort of thing. And so somebody out there feels that way as a artist or as a songwriter. How would you mentor them? How would you speak to them?
There is something to be said for developing your craft, and I think it's hugely important. So we have our limitations, and I always wanted to be an electric guitar player who could shred. And either I didn't try hard enough or take the right lessons or have the right teacher, but I cannot shred. Not even close. I can't. I mean, if I can play acoustic guitar consistently and keep my strings in tune and maybe learn an interesting little voicing with my left hand every once in a while, then that's a success. I don't know. We have our limitations, but there is something to be said for strengthening our weaknesses, you could say. So we have the ability to take vocal lessons. We have our ability to, as a songwriter, study. Like I have a notebook somewhere around here where I actually went through one year and wrote out chord charts for like, I don't know, maybe 20 Beatles songs. I would just hear a song. And I'm like, that's an interesting song. And I would listen to it and I would try to figure out that, like, I could have looked it up online, but that's not doing the work. So there's something to be said about doing the work. And I'm learning now these chord progression ideas from studying others, whether they're masters or not, studying songs that I admire and be like, what in the world is this? Oh, that's a 1 to a minor 4. Oh, this is a 1 to a flat 6. Oh, this is interesting. They change keys in the second section. How did they change keys and then still come back? I don't know. It's a mystery. Let's figure it out. Let's learn. So there's something about embracing what you're like. On the opposite end of that spectrum is like to say God made you how he made you. So my voice is going to sound like it sounds, but I can listen back to it. Like there was a season in my earlier recordings where I would notice that I was singing in the back of my throat. So just it would be kind of swallowed and darker and back there when I would sing. I'm being extreme right now, hopefully, but it was darker, and it took a producer, Ed Cash, who recognized it, and he said, "Hey man, can you sing a little forward?" Now I was a vocal major in college, so I actually knew what that meant. I wanted to resonate it in the front of I wanted to feel the buzz in my nose as opposed to the back of my throat. So I started thinking about how it could be more bright and bring it forward and not let it resonate in the back of my voice. He's like, "Dude, that's so much better." And I added that to my list of things. Okay, I need to do that from now on. Nathan Knuckles always talked about like, hey, when you sing, you want to kind of almost like especially in the first verse, you want to like whisper, like you're telling a story. So when you're singing, whatever the lyric is, don't just come out like this. Start like this and enunciate. Let me hear those consonances and like you're excited, like you're holding. So he's giving me notes like that, and I try to add it to my list of things to remember. So you have to have an an open spirit. I've told you this before, and you do a great job with it, Sam. Every time I find myself in a room with a new producer, I'm like, rake me over the coals, man. When I'm singing this, I'm laying this vocal down. I want to sound as great as I could possibly sound, and then I'm hoping that in post you make me sound even better. But you have to have a teachable spirit to learn, hone your craft, but also know that like I am not going to sound like Chris Tomlin. I am not going to sound like David Crowder. I have to sound like me.
I wonder if there's something to be said for just doing it scared, not loving your voice yet. Because, I mean, on one hand, I don't want to live in a universe where Aaron Shust became a shredder. I actually happen to be a huge fan of your non vibrato voice, which you definitely do vibrato when you're not trying, which is awesome and I love
Interesting.
it. But somebody out there just is comparing themselves to, I don't know, Noah Khan or Dell or you name it, and just feeling like, I guess I can't do the thing that I feel called to do because I'm not that, you know? And what would you say to that person?
The world needs your voice, you know? And sometimes it takes hearing somebody who does remind you of you to give you permission to know, like, I can do it. Talk about like the shredding thing. I grew up in the 80s where everybody that I listened to, the hair bands and the rock and roll, they were singing in the stratosphere. They were singing an octave higher than anything I could do. So it took a moment. I'm not sure what it was exactly. It might have been like Nirvana. The first time I heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit," I'm like, oh, I could sing in that range. You know, it's low. How is this guy singing low? How is this cool? Because everything I knew of low was either Neil Diamond or Barry White, like the old stuff. But like now in the '80s, I can't. I guess you have to sing high, and that concept right there, you have to sing like this, you have to sing like that, is stifling and stymieing. So yeah, sing, do what you do scared. Absolutely. Songwriting. One of the first songs I wrote, no, the first song I wrote on my first album was just a 17-second prayer. Give me words to speak. Don't let my spirit sleep. I can't think of anything worth saying. End of track. That was it. And because I had spent a whole year trying to write songs for the church, like we talked about earlier, trying to write songs that could be vertical worship songs, those Sunday songs, and I couldn't think of anything worth saying. So one day I prayed that. I said, God, give me words to speak. I can't think of anything worth saying. And one of those moments,
Hmm.
one of those few moments in my life where I felt again like that God, like the Spirit of God whispered to my spirit, then write about that. Write from your insecurities, write from your fears. Do it. And so I'm like, okay, then let's start here. Give me words to speak. Don't let my spirit sleep. Because that's a nice rhyme. That wasn't part of my prayer. I can't think of anything worth saying. And then it eventually became a song on the second album that I completed. But I had to
Hmm.
I had to step into the fear. And I'm telling you, man, I'm not saying this is an equation that will always work, but it's been my experience. It was my experience that once I stepped into the fear, the songs began to flow.
Wow. I think of a song like My Savior, My God. What was that experience writing that?
That came from an old hymn. I had a purpose. I had a sphere of influence. I had an audience. The purpose was we need to do some hymns at this Presbyterian church where there's a high value on hymns. And we started digging through hymnals for gems, just digging for lyrics that no one sings for reasons we don't know, because the melody is antiquated, because it never got popular. It wasn't as cool as Great Is Thy Faithfulness, whatever. But there's got to be some buried treasure that we can find. And then once we find it, we'll just put a new melody on top of it and go for it. And we'll sing these great theological truths in church on Sunday. And I found this title that caught my mind. I'm not skilled to understand, like, what a strange title. And then I started reading, as I've already quoted it, and I was going through a season of questioning theology and in young 20s, mid 20s, like at this I wasn't raised Presbyterian, and there were just some things that were said that I'm thinking God would never do that. And when I brought it up to people, not in a not in like a slanderous way, but like a why are we saying that God would do this? And like, well, if you read here in the book of whatever, it says that God absolutely did that and took credit for it. Goodness gracious. And my that's why when I say my theology was being challenged, it was stuff like that. Like I was putting God in a box that apparently he didn't fit in. And so it was comforting to say I'm not skilled to understand. But to go back to the songwriting angle of your question, like my goal there was to just make it as simple as possible. Certainly not as brilliant as possible. Let's make this melody so accessible that people are going to get this in the first try. That was my goal. And we sang the verses of that song for a year and a half at our church before I wrote the chorus. Sitting at a red light on the way home. Like, we need, because if you think of it, like melodically, it's in the key of D. It just kind of stays really low in the vocal range, at least for guys. You know, I am not skilled to understand that he would leave his place on high. The word high was actually the highest note in the whole song. I never thought of that. Da 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 da. And then it just kind of like, settled back down again. And I'm like, man, I wish we could sing something that was just like anthemic and fist pumping and in repeating and simple and like something like that would be cool.
Yeah.
And so, I could get into the, as I was sitting at this red light, realizing that I was doing My Savior Lives, My Savior Loves. And then I wrote, My God, He was, My God, He is. I'm like, oh, I could get lives and loves and flip them around and it'll rhyme with was and is. And that'll be cool. And the light turned green. I'm like, this has got to work. We got to,
Good
so it was
idea.
exactly. So it was a bit of a Frankenstein moment. Like, let's get this old hymn with a new melody we've been singing for a year and a half. Let's see if I can put this chorus in it. There's no bridge to the song, and let's see if it works. Let's find a common key and a common tempo and see if we can make it work. And so that was talk about a craft. I mean, that's not the normal way to write a song over the course of a year and a half. And I think that's the lesson. When people ask me like, hey, I really want to be a singer. Can you tell me what I should do? How should I do this? I'm like, man, it's different for everybody, but God's given you a sphere of influence right now. You've got to cater to it. You've got to tend to it. You got to feed your sheep
I love that, man.
and not dream about what you'd like to do in the future. You've got something right now that you've got to be faithful to take care of.
So instead of shepherding the Madison Square Garden in your head,
Right.
shepherd the 50 or 500 or 5,000 right in front of you.
Or 5.
Or 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Wow.
Totally.
Which sometimes it's just our wife and kids or
Man, I tell you what, if we're skipping that step, then we're already off to a bad start, you know? Maybe as worship leaders in general, or maybe even more so as dudes in specific, it's so easy and tempting to put all of our chips into our career and what we do, and forsake the family. And I don't just mean quality time, quantity time. Like, man, if the church is guilty of one thing, it can really tap its employees of time away from family and personal time. And I mean, between all the hours in the day and rehearsals at night and 5 services on the weekend, like there's little time for anything else, and families suffer because of that. We've got to keep we've got to put our foot down at some point in time and say, no, I've got, for me, it was ER. This is before even DVRs existed. ER was on TV on Thursday nights. And like, man, if rehearsal went long, I missed quality time with my wife watching ER on Thursday nights. It wasn't streaming. It was on and then it was over. Like, I got to make it home.
that's hilarious.
And so that was a real practical way to say, no, we got to finish this. We got to finish this. We got to, because it's not about ER. I didn't care about the plot. It was about quality time with my family. Yeah.
That takes me back, man. ER. For us, when we were first married, it was House, Dr. House.
Oh yeah, it's a great show. All these medical dramas.
I know, right?
I like House.
I think a lot of people that have been in the worship staff context gets what you're saying, but how does that family, work, life balance, career balance thing happen when you're a recording artist on tour hundreds of days a year, living the bus life? How have you navigated that outside the walls of the church?
I forget what year it was, 2012 maybe, where I did a 28-day run in a row. And it was a bus run. It was a West Coast run where you kind of start and, I think we flew to Texas, caught the bus and went out through Arizona. It all sounds exciting when it's in the future. And then when it's happening, you're like, okay, like, grateful for my job, grateful for the ministry opportunity. Lord, do some miracles tonight, touch some hearts, and then let's do the same thing again tomorrow. And yeah, every once in a while you get to see a cactus, and then every once in a while you see a palm tree. And I always say dressing rooms and parking lots. That's pretty much what we see on the road. And 28 days was rough. I think there was one day off in in Oregon where or like a 3-day run where I could have gone home. But I think I had my band with me, and my band, they weren't going to go home because of finances. And I think I felt bad. It's kind of like a Uriah moment. Like, I'm not going to go home while my men are sleeping in the field. So that was my reason to stay out. But like, I had little kids, and at the end of 28 days, it was so hard. We made a policy of no more than 12 days. And if something comes
Mm.
up after 12 days, then I will, Sarah and I, my wife and I will sit down and have a conversation about whether or not we should do this. And had the opportunity really soon. Had a really great opportunity pop up on my calendar on day 13. We, based on just a principle of the first time that this came up, we declined it, and it was a good opportunity. And oh my goodness, what could have come? The doors that could have flown open had I said yes to this opportunity. It doesn't matter. We have to trust God that the right things are going to happen. And maybe the absolute right thing to do that day was to go home and hug my kids and hug my wife.
That's huge, man.
So I think
That's so good.
you have to make those policies, and then you have to stick to them. That's on the grand scale of when it comes to the road. And I mean, I've got to, now that I've said that, if people wanted to creep on my upcoming calendar, you'll see that this coming October I've got a long stretch that goes past the 12 days. And we discussed it. We knew this was going to be the case. And we talked
Mm-hmm.
about, what should I say no to this? Should I say yes to this? And it's my wife. It's never, I'll tell you this much. It's never me telling my wife, I need to do this. You need to let me do this. It's always the other way around. It's my wife saying, you need to say yes to this. We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. You need to say yes to this. This is important. You need to do it. Or it's her saying, no, 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 come home.
Good, man. I mean, there's an undertone of what I hear you saying, and it's this concept of Sabbath. And it's interesting. I feel like maybe 5, 6 years ago, there was this book by John Mark Comer called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry that a lot of people have
Yeah.
talked about. And I read it, and I feel like it was really helpful to our family. And but there's also, and I don't know if you've talked much about this. I think you have, and a lot of people who know you and keep up with you would know that that you've been a student of Messianic Jewish tradition, where Judaism and Christianity kind of merge. And so, with that perspective, and anything you want to comment on in that regard is great. But with that perspective, what has Sabbath meant for you and your family?
I went to Israel for the first time in 2016. It was a quick little shotgun 4.5 day red carpet experience. It was fast, but I came back knowing, like, I mean, listen, I've had a Bible in my possession or two since I was a kid. Went to Bible school. Like, I know the maps in the back, but to walk in those places, it's like if you grew up with I don't know, pick a state, a map of Florida on your wall, and then the first day you go as an adult, you're like, oh my goodness, there is a big lake in the middle at the bottom, just like the map. I'm looking at it. It's crazy. Orlando, isn't it? There really is a Disney World here. Oh my goodness, there is Cape Canaveral. It's actually here. Even more so with walking through Israel, like the places that are on the map, they're actually there. And when you read the stories that Jesus went here and went there, and it's actually there, Mount Carmel where Elijah, it's actually there. You can stand up there. It's crazy. But I came back like with the bug, knowing that I wanted to go back, but also knowing that I didn't want to be a perpetual tourist. I wanted it to be deeper. I wanted it to be about the people. So I started developing relationships. And
Mm.
somebody outside that growing circle of friendships in Israel bought me a book my first year. And it's called Mud House Sabbath, if anybody wants to look it up. Short little, maybe 100 pages, tiny little book. Written by a girl named Laura Winner, who was raised Jewish, but found herself in a very Christian environment in Virginia, and going to church with Christians and just a regular evangelical Protestant church and loving it. But noting that there were a lot of things in practice in Jewish tradition that the Christian church would really benefit from if they observed, if they incorporated it into their normal rhythms. And that's what this little book was about, just a couple of those rhythms. And the first chapter was Sabbath. And so I got this as a Christmas gift. So I sat down in my chair like on December 27th, whatever, and just, in this restful feeling of Christmas break. And I cracked this book open, and I wish I had it right here. I'd read you the first page. She actually quotes a friend of hers that talks about observing the Sabbath and the feeling, the rush and the race of Friday afternoon to beat the sunset. and like hurrying to the market to grab the vegetables and to come home and sweep the floors and clear off the table and grab a quick shower. And then she describes after all the hurry and the hustle and bustle, she'd have a little flower placed in the middle of the dining room table, and the sun would get low enough that it would come in through the blinds and make the shadows over that flower and all. And that was her signal in her heart to know to exhale, because rest had finally come, because God had given a command. It's the fourth commandment, to observe the Sabbath and to keep it holy. And it comes with a blessing. And I felt it. I felt it. I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I want it. I want it. And I remembered going to Israel. We actually landed on Saturday, and talk about a country that was asleep. I mean, everyone was just resting. Like nothing was open. Everyone was just chilling. And then the next day, you know, like it's like the horns started honking and the phone started ringing all at once, like in a movie. And it's a discipline that we've incorporated into our lives. And it's interesting because like there are verses. I just opened up to one in Isaiah 56 where uh, happy is the person who does this. Anyone who grasps it firmly, talking about observing justice and doing what is right. Anyone who keeps Sabbath and does not profane it and keeps himself from doing evil. And you skip down a couple of verses. It talks about the foreigner, God talking here. The foreigners who join themselves to the Lord, who serve him, who love the name of the Lord, to be his workers, who keep the Sabbath and not profane it. Blessed, happy are they. God told Adam to rest on the seventh day. Adam wasn't Jewish. The Jews came along 2,000 years later with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then you have to get onto, with Moses. But, it was a command over 2,000 years later, but from Genesis chapter 1, some would say it's chapter 2, verse 1, but on some accounts it's the last verse of chapter 1. God's saying, he rested on the seventh day, and this was a pattern that he was starting. And it wasn't like Adam had the choice to be like, excuse me, would you be okay if I observe Thursday? So there's something about resting, and God forces upon our bodies rest, the need for rest every single day. It's called sleep. We have to have these rhythms of rest, and God gave us the gift of resting once a week. So to the best of our ability, in closing, my family has thoroughly enjoyed Friday night sundown to Saturday night sundown to the best of our ability, and not working, not doing anything. It's saying, God, we trust you with our future. We trust you with our provision. We trust you with our time. We're going to take a break. We're going to rest.
You guys do it right, man. I've interacted with you multiple times where it's like Friday, getting towards closing time, right before
Right, yeah.
before sunset, and I love the prep, and it just seems like you guys enjoy relationship and food and
It's a celebration.
recreation and
It's
rest.
yeah.
Yeah.
Even if, listen, we don't talk about fasting. Don't let your right hand, left hand, the whole giving and fasting, whatever. Isn't that a song? We don't talk about, Bruno. We don't talk about fasting. But when we do fast, we break fast on Shabbat. It's a celebration. And that is a Jewish tradition. So that's not a biblical mandate, but sitting at the feet of Jewish people, especially those who follow Jesus as the Messiah. I'll leave you with this. I could talk about Shabbat for hours. We talk about being Christians, following Jesus, and following not only what Jesus said to do, but what Jesus did and what Jesus practiced. And Jesus kept the Sabbath. Jesus was Jewish. I'll go so far as to say Jesus is Jewish. So my being a Christian means that I have a Jewish rabbi. And that opens doors, and that opens ideas.
Yeah, it does. Interesting.
That we're currently walking through.
Hmm. Dude, that's so good, man. I know for us, I mentioned that John Mark Comer book, and there was another book that when I was still, before I was full time as a producer and songwriter, and back when I was leading worship at a church, a pastor gave me a book by a guy named Pete Scazzaro. I think that's how you say his name, Pete Scazzaro or Pete Scazzaro. Yeah, it's called The Emotionally Healthy Leader. And there was a whole section on that about the concept of Sabbath biblically. And this was before I really had interacted with any of the things. I mean, being friends with you, we've learned a lot. I mean, you gave us the book by Don Pinto. And you actually, my wife has a Jewish study Bible, mainly because of a conversation you guys had.
Nice, yeah.
But even before all that, Pete's book was where I first kind of, I don't know, it was after that burnout time I mentioned where it was kind of like just an oasis in the desert. It's what I needed to hear was like, I have permission to just shut my phone off one day a week and just enjoy my family
Yeah.
and rest and relax and
Guilt-free,
recharge.
I would say for us, guilt-free permission, because God endorses this so heavily, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it struck me as more as of a gift than a
yes,
command.
totally. Yeah, absolutely.
So we started doing a version of it, and it's not as colorful and amazing as you guys do it. For us, it's a lot more informal. And not long after that, someone gave me the John Mark Comer book, and that whole book is about that basically. So we just started awkwardly falling into it, and it's become a lifeline every single week.
Yeah, you guys
I would
do
say,
it. You do it well. You do it well. I think you absolutely, in my opinion, you guys absolutely execute the heart of the Sabbath. You know, just it's almost like a tithe. It's a percentage. Just say, okay, one day a week, I'm not working.
well said. Yeah.
You know, it's so yes, it's supposed to rejuvenate you. I mean, I don't have, and I think I can speak for my family. This doesn't come up, this sentence anymore. I need a vacation. Like we feel rested. We've got like a day. I mean, I'm always thinking today's Wednesday. We got a couple more days until the end of the week and
Vacation.
vacation. Yeah, one day vacation at home. I got special PJs that I pull out just for Shabbat. We do grab onto some of the traditions that exist in the Jewish world, but I believe it's a principle that God endorses.
Yeah. I mean, even just from from a non-traditional standpoint, just practically and creatively, we've all read that creativity comes from the margins in our lives, and I've found that to be true. I don't think that, especially from what I learned about myself after that 2016 season of burnout, um, I think I would just be a different person doing different things than I do if we didn't have that. My kids look forward to it. In fact, they hold us to it. If there's ever any time when we're just kind of, it's only happened a few times, but just I just have to do this one thing or even housework and that kind of stuff, like
Or
projects
even
around the house.
conversations. What we find that the biggest temptation is to have the stressful planning, problem solving conversations during Shabbat.
Mm.
And what talk about, to me it's such a huge act of worship to say, God, I have got to figure this out. But today I'm going to place this in your hands and I'm going to rest
Yep.
in your sovereign control and your goodwill and your love for me. And I'm going to rest. And
I love that,
we're not even
dude.
going to talk about this. We're not even going to talk about how this needs to get figured out. We're going to bench it until sunset tomorrow night. And then we'll tackle it. And then we'll figure out what needs, and then we'll book the flight. Then we'll cancel the flight. Then we'll whatever. But in the meanwhile,
Yeah.
God, I'm giving this to you. To me, that is such a that's an act of worship. Unlike other things that I'll say, it's way deeper than me singing a song with words that somebody else wrote. To me, that's brass tacks right there. Like I'm giving this to you.
Yeah, man. I mean, when we first started talking about this, you connected it to provision
Vision.
and, his provision. And there's a trust thing there. There's a trust thing. Like, do we really believe that? It doesn't seem like it's that hard, but those of us, especially in the entrepreneur space or single income family space, or, when you're having to get up and work and hustle or you don't eat, it's easy to get into that
Right.
mindset of there's always more to do.
Right. That, and if that mindset can trickle into the other 6 days of the week, when you are working, when it is time to work, but I mean, you get a chance to practice that acquiescence every Saturday to say, I'm giving it to you. So now when Tuesday rolls around and you start to feel that pressure, that stress weigh in on you, how is this going to work? How is this going to, I mean, how are we going to pay how the bills? How's this going to, you remember, oh yeah, a couple of days ago, remember when I just gave it all over to the Lord and I said, I'm going to be
Mm,
at peace with this? Well, today I do need to work, but I'm still giving this to you. This is still in your hands. I still acknowledge you as provider, which that changes the perspective. I was able to change my thinking, which is actual definition of repent, to repent, to repents, rethink. changed my thinking about the idea like when I work, it's not because I'm earning money, I'm earning provision. I'm not creating income. The Lord is my provider. And when I work, I'm serving the king. I'm executing my assignment within my calling. Like I'm doing it,
Wow.
and then the Lord provides. So,
Yeah.
it's the question of, I mean, I'm not wording this as well as I'd like to, but
Great,
what
dude.
leads to what? The Lord provides, and He's going to provide for everything. And Jesus talks about this Sermon on the Mount. Look at the flowers of the field. Look at the birds of the air. Do they sow? Do they reap? Do they spin? God takes care of them. How much more important are you? So when I do work, when I write songs, whenever I post, whenever I'm doing what needs to be done, whenever I'm typing in lyrics and sending them off, when I'm doing the actual measurable work, I'm not creating income. I'm not earning. And this is just a mental thing that helps me function. It's the Lord who provides.
Dude, that's so good. Man, we've covered a lot of ground and this has been great. I have one more question for you
Fire.
before we sign off and I'll let you get back to your day. If you could mentor your younger self, say your 18-year-old self or even your 30-year-old self, what would you say?
Oh man. I think it's everything I hoped would be true when I was 18 and 30. And it's interesting because those are two pivotal moments where there was a transition period and things were changing, and the future was unclear.
Hmm.
Um, and and I can look back now and say you might have even believed that the future was wrong. It might have seemed that the future as it was going to unfold would be unfortunate, and that you were going to have to settle. But I'm looking back now and saying this is exactly where God wanted you. And even when things appeared to be really, really unfortunate, I can tell you now that it might not be what you wanted it to look like, but it's exactly where God wanted you to be. And that's exactly where you want to be. So I think it's faith. I think that just boils down to faith. Trust, man. Trust. In the Hebrew, the word for faith and trust is one and the same.
Hmm.
So I always made fun of Hollywood for saying things like "have faith." I just gotta have faith, man. Have faith. I always yell at the TV screen. Have faith in what? Have faith. Trusting that God's will is perfect.
Was it the 18-year-old or the 30-year-old that thought you might be a shredder, a guitar player?
18-year-old for sure. But that was after 5 years of failed guitar lessons. I think I knew by then it wasn't going to happen. But I mean, I walked into so many seasons of the unknown where I was being called to the plate, to use a baseball term, like, and I'm like, no, 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 I can't hit. I really can't. This is not what I do. And they're like, well, we need you to pinch hit right now. We need you, and we think you can do it. Come on, man, we believe in you. And I'm like, this is not what I do. This is not what I do. I play ping pong. Like, I'm in the wrong sport. This is not right. And I would step into a new season of doing a thing, like like leading worship, because there was a need, and someone pointed the finger at me and said, we need you to do this. And I'm like, you got the wrong guy. Talk about another Moses moment. Like, not what I do. Like, I'm a piano minor. I play classical music. This is not what I do. Like, yeah, we think it is, and we have a need, and you can do it. And I step into it with fear and trembling, and it becomes my new reality, my new assignment for a season. And then there's a new thing that feels frightening. And I can point to the first time I decided to write a song about God's promises to the Jewish people. That I'm like, this is outside of my wheelhouse right here. Like, this is this is not what I write about. But with fear and trembling, I wrote it and I released it, and it's opened up doors of ministry opportunity that I couldn't have fathomed.
Yeah. Was that Zion?
Yeah, Zion. I always say Zion. I think it's my sloppy Pittsburgh. In Hebrew, it's Zion. I remember when I was recording it, I called my friend Chaim in Israel. I'm like, hey, what's the proper pronunciation of Zion? Is it Zion or is it Zion? And he was like, it's Zion. Like, okay, so I'm way off anyhow. I'll just stick to the American pronunciation of it. But it means like the pinpoint. God chose it. God chose that to be the place where his eye never looks away from, and where he says that he will reign forever. Um,
And that
there, right
song was
there in
pretty
Jerusalem.
recent, right? Like in the scope of your career.
2018,
Yeah.
2018. Yeah, right. So, I mean, that's 8 years now. But yeah, out of that's crazy to think. From 2005, 2015, 10 years, 13 years into my career, I recorded that song. Seems like a long
Yeah,
time
you
ago.
can't imagine your current music career without Zion, right?
No, it gets played every time, and it's when I play it in front of a predominantly Jewish or at least a Jewish sympathetic audience, they embrace these words because
Mm.
it's the promise. I've heard it said when God makes a promise, you can bank on it. When God says something twice in the Bible, He doubly means it. We need to pay attention to it. Well, this promise is repeated 64 times in the whole of the Bible. First to actually, I was going to say first to Abraham, but it's in Deuteronomy as well. So basically saying, um, I'm going to make you a great nation. Yeah, well, Abraham would have been in Genesis, so it starts in Genesis 12. I'm going to make you a great nation. I'm going to bless you. I'm going to scatter you to the ends of the earth. But in the last days, I'm going to bring you back again to the land and to my heart. That's the general gist of the promise. It's repeated 64 times. That's the gist of the song Zion. And man, if we're gonna like, if as a Christian, the idea that God would make a promise to the Jewish people and then change his mind, which is a popular opinion, it's a popular theology, that God would change his mind and say, I'm going to transfer my blessings from Israel. Now I'm going to transfer them to Gentile Christianity. If that's what God does, if that's what his character is, to change his mind like that, what's to prevent him from changing his mind again, transferring the blessings away from the Gentile church and just giving it to somebody else? And we don't believe this is who God is. When God makes a promise, his promise is irrevocable. As Paul warns us to believe that God's promises and his call are irrevocable. Has God rejected his children? Has God rejected Israel? By no means. That's Romans 11. People think, oh, you're writing Jewish music now. Like, no, it's just biblical. Just writing from the Bible. That's it. Just taking it. I'm taking it literally. I'd rather be accused of taking his word literally as opposed to being like, oh, I thought you were being figurative about that one. I didn't really believe you meant that. I thought you were being poetic.
Man, well, that 18-year-old Aaron that we're talking about probably would never have imagined that a few years later you'd be writing songs like Zion.
Yeah, not days before I wouldn't have known that, right? I mean, I was 42 years old when I wrote that right here in this room on this desk. I had all my Bibles just spread out. I wrote the chorus on a plane in the middle of the night. I still have the recording. You can hear a guy snoring in the background. I'm just singing, "Bring you back home. I bring you back home, oh my children."
Wow.
But then I just spread out all the Bibles, like all the translations that I could across the desk. I'm like, okay, this is the story that I want to tell. It starts with Genesis 12. Let's start with Genesis 12. How do we write a verse about Genesis 12? But I
Dude, you're
love.
so good at those epic narratives, those storytelling songs
Thank you, man.
that are rooted in scripture, man. And
Rooted in Scripture. That's the
yeah,
goal. That's the goal.
I love that. Man, well, it's
Thank you.
pretty cool that that 18-year-old grew up to become the Aaron Shust. And it's pretty cool that you
You're
made time to
kind.
join us today, bro.
Very kind. I love you, man.
And until we get pizza again,
May it be soon.
yes,
God
thank you
bless you,
for
man.
being
God
here.
bless your audience and this work that God's placed in your lap to do. You're taking the scary bull by the horns and you're running with it, and I applaud you for it. Anything I could
Amen.
ever do, man, you know I'm here.
I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Love you, dude.
Love you, dude. Have a good one.
You too.